Don't you turn that dial. Don't you turn that station, because if you do, you're going to miss a really, 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 really good show. You would miss an interview with Rich Miller of CapitalFacts.com, the man who knows more about Illinois politics than virtually anybody in the state of Illinois. It's about a 12-minute interview. You won't want to miss a word that Rich Miller has to say. And then you get to see Dan Rutherford, okay? And you see Dan Rutherford not as he's currently speaking, but when he wasn't quite running for governor back in January of 2010. What was he saying? Was he consistent? Does it even matter? Because is Dan Rutherford dead man walking? Well, it always matters. You never know what's going to happen. And you get an update. You'll get an update on the analysis of who's going to win the Republican primary and why, and who's going to win the general election for governor in November of 2008. And of course, that's the Republican primary for governor. Don't you turn that station. Don't you turn that dial. Because if you do, you miss a really, 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 really good show. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy. As I promised, you'll get to see about a 12-minute interview with Rich Miller of CapitalFacts.com. That interview was on February 11th, the year 2014, just a few weeks ago. We're taping this on February 27th, the year 2014. You're going to hear an update on my predictions of who's going to win the Republican primary. In fact, the exact finish in the Republican primary for governor, who's going to win the general election. And you're going to see Dan Rutherford back in January of 2010 when he was on Public Affairs. Was he saying the same thing as he's saying now in his run for governor? Could you have predicted then that he'd have some of the same problems he's having now for governor? Don't you turn, I mean, really, it's going to be a really, as I promised, a really good show. Okay, so an update. We're taping this on February 24th. Those of you who saw my show, our show of last week, you saw the predictions. Really very little change, okay? It's still Bruce Rauner's to lose. Right now we're predicting he gets 50% of the vote in the Republican primary for governor. We're predicting that Bill Brady comes in second with 26%. The also-rans, Kirk Dillard at 18% and Dan Rutherford at 6%. Except if Brady were to get $1 million, maybe even $500,000. He can get those kinds of contributions because Rauner has given himself so much money. The limits on campaign contributions are off. If Brady finds an angel, $1 million, he becomes competitive. He's got a good message. He's consistent. He's a consistent social and economic conservative. Might give Rauner a run for his money. Rauner, as you remember, is not quite a consistent, he's not a social conservative. He is an economic conservative, okay? So, but if that doesn't happen, Rauner wins easily. They go to the general election, Rauner beats Quinn. That's it, it's all over. You can kind of go to sleep for the rest of 2014, all right? I mean, there's really not too much to say other than I just want to emphasize since we last saw each other, we've been seeing these ads that the unions are running. Don't worry, they're not going to really affect anything. Everybody knows that it's these union ads. What are they saying? This stuff about Stu Levine and Rauner. As the Tribune said, the connection is tenuous at best. Not going to be worried. Oh, Carol Marine's all upset about the Medicaid investments that one of his companies was providing. Was it Medicaid, Medicare, Rauner's companies? And of course he's responsible for somebody who's 90 or 95, they died. Yes, of course Bruce Rauner is responsible. Carol Marine says, fact, not so quick. Carol just doesn't understand how venture capitalism works, excuse me, how investment works, how anything. Really, she doesn't understand economics, really crucial. So those ads by the unions aren't going to really affect things. They'll spend $6 or $8 million. The fact that, okay, that Dillard got the endorsement of the Illinois Education Association, he's going to run ads now saying, oh, how proud he is to have the IEA behind him. His dad was a teacher, okay, and he's going to do what they want in terms of pensions. Oh, bizarre land, okay. All right, so stay tuned. Right now you're going to see Rich Miller, Capital Facts, the Capital Facts blog, capitalfacts.com. You're going to see Dan Rutherford, and then come back next week and every week for Public Affairs. All right, so Rich, we're standing here, literally standing here at the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. You've just given a stirring speech to students to get involved. Well, why don't we start? Should these students get involved with Dan Rutherford as an example?
What a heck of a question that was. No, I wouldn't recommend it. First of all, because I don't think he's going to win the primary. So why work for a month?
All right. But what's your take? So you have this guy. He's a state treasurer. He's been this treasurer for 3.5 years. 40 days or so, maybe 50 days before the election. People who haven't been paying attention to this. That's the primary election, the Republican primary. There are 4 candidates: Dan Rutherford, Senator Bill Brady, State Senator Kirk Dillard, and businessman Bruce Rauner, and Treasurer, as you said, Dan Rutherford. So these allegations come out that a state employee, first it's whispered, he doesn't file anything, and says essentially the rumor is he's going to file and accuse the state treasurer of sexual harassment and of abuse of political power. So basically coercing people to do political work on state time. And then we're taping this on February 11th. Yesterday, a federal complaint gets filed, basically alleging what I've just said. So, is this unusual? This kind of thing happening, or does it only happen in Illinois?
That happens in other states. You had the guy who goes on some hike, right? Says he's going on some hike in the Appalachians or whatever, and it turns out he wasn't. I mean, we're unique,
Rich,
but we're not completely unusual.
All right, give people the lay of the land. Rauner's got 40% in the latest poll. Maybe, well, before this happened, Rauner had 34% in the latest poll. Rutherford and Brady were bunched up at 15 and 17%. You pick them, and then Dillard with 9. And then this happens, and now it seems like, what? Rutherford's gone down to maybe last, about 10%?
No, he's in third place.
Third place.
So wait, let me answer.
Correct.
So you've had Rauner on a steady uphill trajectory because he's spending millions. The others have been pretty much flatline until Rutherford had his problems, and it started to come down now. There's a couple of $1 million that got dropped this week on anti-Bruce Rauner television ads. The object is to try to get Rauner's numbers to come down. But the question is, so who do they vote for then? And nobody really knows. It's impossible to really say.
But right now, as you call it, because as of February 11th with the primary of March 18th, would you say the election is Rauner's to lose?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, do you it's tough to make a prediction here, but the allegations have been made. There's a formal complaint out, filed in federal court. Is this now a continuing issue, these allegations of sexual harassment and abuse of his political power, allegations against State Treasurer Dan Rutherford? Is this became a crucial issue in the next, the remaining 35 days or so?
It sucked all the oxygen out of Illinois politics for the last 10, 11 days.
What's going to happen in the next 35 days?
This will continue to sputter along, highs and lows. The TV ad campaign against Rauner will happen. If anybody starts to move up in the polls, Rauner has enough money so that if, for instance, Kirk Dillard starts to move up in the polls, Rauner can start running ads blasting Kirk Dillard. The Barack Obama ad is what he would probably use.
I mean, he'll say to Dillard that, look, you supported Obama, you're a bad Republican.
And he took a lot of money, hundreds of thousands, I guess, over the years from public employee union bosses, according to Rauner.
Dillard did. Is
right.
that allegations have been made? You would know. You cover politics more than anybody. Is that accurate?
Right. He got a lot of money from the IEA last time when he ran for governor.
The Illinois Education Association.
Correct. Right. Plus, he's gotten money over the years. Brady's also taken some money. He's also had a couple of bad headlines, what have you. If he starts rising, Rauner can go after him. If Rauner comes way, way down, if those things work out and everybody else can't go up because Rauner's going after him, then it's a four-way crawl to the finish line. Bloodied, broken bodies, crawling to the finish line.
And what causes Rauner not to be able to go up?
If Rauner goes down by the union ads, if they spend $6, $8, $9, $7 million, what have you.
Which they might. You're saying the public sector unions got $6 million to spend to go after Rauner?
They dropped $2 million on TV ads for 2 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever to go. That would be $6 million. They already dropped about $1 million on mail through another political action committee. So that's $3 million they've dropped.
Tell the people, what do those ads say in a nutshell? The ads against Bruce Rauner by the public sector unions.
The theme is he's promising to shake up Springfield, and he's the guy that's been shaking it down.
And how has he been shaking it down, according to those ads?
The newest ad is he hired a political. His company already employed a political fixer named Stu Levine, who's now in federal prison, and that somehow or another Levine, who sat on the Illinois the teachers' pension fund board, was able to steer contracts to him. There's no proof of that, and it's really kind of iffy.
There's no proof of what?
There's no proof that there was any kind of direct quid pro quo. The problem is when you're explaining, you're losing.
And Rauner, you're saying, is going to be explaining now for a few weeks?
He's going to have to. Yeah, he'll have to address that ad.
Is he going to have to attend some of these debates he's been dodging so he can show people he's not afraid and he's got answers?
No.
He'll avoid the debates, but he'll come on with his own ads explaining these things?
He's a good debater. He'll go to the debates he wants to go to, and he won't go to the other ones. He's out raising money, man, and he's out campaigning and spending money on TV. So that's actually a lot more valuable than going to a debate that, in many ways, and no offense to our hosts here, not a lot of people are going to watch anyway. Okay, it's not like a presidential debate where the whole nation tunes in. So, it's a gubernatorial.
So in your view, did Rauner do that? Did he, in one form or another, pay people off, Stu Levine and others, to get business with these pension funds?
I have no proof of that. And
what's your view? What's your opinion?
Let me just say I've not seen any proof of that, definitive proof of that. There's a lot of smoke here. I'm not sure that there's fire yet.
All right. So on March 18th, primary election, who's the winner for the Republican primary for governor?
We already talked about that.
No, right now. Just make it clear.
I don't do predictions, but we already talked. It's Rauner's to lose. It's Rauner's to lose.
And how does he lose? I mean,
I already talked about
unions
that.
Run these ads, and that's the only way.
Listen to me.
Yeah, I did. So you're saying the unions run these ads, and if the unions are successful, they drive him down. Other than that, Rauner wins. Is that right?
Most likely.
Yeah, because Dillard doesn't have anything on his own. Brady doesn't have anything on his own. Rutherford, they got to depend on these public sector unions.
Well, no, it's not just public. It's also private. All right. So Local 150 of the operating engineers, right? Those guys work for contractors, road contractors, home builders, et cetera, et cetera. That's not necessarily a public employee.
All right, so Rauner wins. Now we're going to the November general election. It's Rauner against Quinn. Give me the winner.
I don't know. The guy spends maybe $50, $100 million between primary day and election day. What do you think happens?
You're the guy being interviewed.
I'm asking you.
Who wins?
I'm asking you.
Okay, you're telling me that if he spends $50 to $100 million, if Rauner spends $50 to $100 million, Rauner beats Pat Quinn in November. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm saying it's probably Rauner's to lose again.
All right, and so the issue is, as we go forward in the next 7 or 8 months, what is the issue? Because, progressive income tax, people are saying that the Democrats want to get the amendment of the Constitution on the ballot.
Some
right?
do. Some do. Some do. Conservative Democrats, and as you know, there are quite a few of those.
Some do what? What do they want?
Some want that on there.
What do they want?
They want a progressive income tax. Some more conservative Democrats don't support that. And as you know, it takes 3/5 in each chamber to get something like that passed. So to get it on a ballot, or
3/5, 60%.
All right, I have yet to eat that.
They have the super majorities. If they keep the Democrats together, the Democrats can put a progressive tax on the ballot. That would mean that the Constitution would be amended if it passed. The Constitution would then allow progressive income tax.
First, they got to get it passed, right? And not all the Democrats are for it. So there's no guarantee they can even do that. If they do get it passed, then the voters get a vote on it. And then there's the rules about, it goes to the voters and then they decide.
And what do you think? Do the voters support that or not?
Polling I've seen is probably not. Probably not.
So it's a bad issue for the Democrats. Why are they Cullerton wants it, Madigan wants it, you think?
Well, the Republicans like some bad issues for them too, right? So everybody's got their bad issues, okay, that hurt them, but that's their ideology, and so that's what they do.
So what's the issue in the general election? Rauner says these guys want to keep raising your taxes. I want to cut your taxes. Is that the big issue? Quinn says, I'm proud of the tax increase. Is that what he says?
I don't know. Quinn's going to run on his record, and it's a scratchy record. Okay? So that was a 80s reference because we don't have records hardly
And his approval rating is really low now, 20-30%, right? Quinn's approval rating.
Right. But it was like 36% when he won in 2010. Difference is, if Rauner wins, he's running against a much stronger candidate. And that's all I got time for.
All right. right, thank you so much. Rich Miller, publisher of Capital Facts, the best goddamn document in the country, right?
That'll get cut.
Saying, I hope you enjoyed that interview. We came to you from the Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. That, of course, is David Axelrod's. What do we call it? I guess we call it I don't know, we call it the Institute of Politics. It's his organization, it's his baby. And of course we were interviewing Rich Miller here on February 11th. Rich Miller, of course, is the proprietor of Capital Facts. Hope you enjoyed that. We're going to do many more of these. Stay tuned to Public Affairs. These segments coming to you on youtube.com/publicaffairstv, and you'll see them, of course, on the Public Affairs TV program. Thanks so much.
What I believe we need to be doing is actually truly creating jobs, and that's by having a better work environment, a better regulatory environment, a better tax environment in the state of Illinois. That's what will actually create jobs, not because you cajole or threaten to keep a company in certain ways to keep jobs here.
So does that mean you should be using the office as the bully pulpit for tax policy?
I think that it is incumbent upon the Treasurer of the state of Illinois to weigh in on issues and discussions dealing with taxes, yes.
So over the
I think as a leader of the state of Illinois, that is incumbent upon that person to do that.
Would you take a pledge as the state treasurer not to support any increase, net increase in the taxes, the American Tax Reform Pledge?
You know, I've been in elected office now for going on almost 18 years, and during that entire time, I have never signed a pledge to do one thing or another, whether it's in regards to taxes, whether it's to vote for this or that. I think it's inappropriate for someone in an elected public office to go sign a deal on something before they're ever in the environment. That being said, I've never voted for those tax increases. So I believe it is better to go at it to be a rational discussion and not having already said to one side of the issue, you've already made your decision. Such as, do I believe we should have an income tax increase in the state of Illinois today as a sitting state senator? Absolutely not. I've not signed a pledge to that because I think that in order to negotiate with those that do believe we need to have an income tax increase, that you need to come at it in a way to say, let's figure out what the real problem is and have that solution.
But you know, some of the candidates in the Republican primary for governor have signed that pledge.
Sure they have.
Andy McKenna signed the pledge, Dan Proft signed the pledge, Bill Brady signed the pledge.
But yeah, I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know.
You don't know what signing the pledge means?
No, I don't know what the political. You know, I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. I've not done that.
Because you're saying you don't know all the circumstances, or you don't think it's the best way to negotiate? I'm not sure what the point is.
No, my point is I don't believe that somebody signing an agreement on some public policy matter, again, whether it's on taxes and whether it's because the state bird of Illinois should be a cardinal or not. I don't believe you sign pledges and deals like that before you go into the office. Now, you go upon your record and you make your declarations and the like, but no, I don't think
so when
those
you
are
look at
appropriate.
you are state senator as well, so you've got dual responsibilities here, running for treasurer,
sure,
but also state senator, and been in that office now for, as you say, your 8th year as state senator. Certainly the issue of whether there is an $11 billion deficit in the state, and if so, should the income tax be increased as one way to deal with that deficit? Pat Quinn says yes. He wants to see about a $4 billion income tax increase. Dan Hines says yes, $4 billion tax increase. I think all the Republican nominees for governor say no, whether they've signed the pledge or not. Proft takes it further and says you should cut taxes, not raise them. What do you say?
My take on it is we should not be raising the taxes. A fair question follow-up is then what would you do next, Senator? Until we fix the spending problem, there is no way that we should be looking for any dime or dollar out of the pocketbooks of the taxpayers of the state of Illinois. In the two primary areas that must be fixed, because you know what, if Pat Quinn gets his way and raises taxes by 67% like the Senate Democrats passed, or gets his way by raising by 50%,
you voted
like
against that?
I absolutely voted against it.
Against that, okay.
Against it, that
against
is correct.
The 60s, what you call the 67% increase in
because that's the House Bill 174, Senate Amendment 2, increased the income tax in the state of Illinois by 67%.
From 3% to 5%.
Passed by all Democrat votes in the Senate. Until we fix the issues, particularly of the pension system of the state of Illinois, and until we fix the Medicaid issue in the state of Illinois government deserves no more money. Because if it was given more money today, it'll swallow it like the Jabberwocky out of the Lewis Carroll creature out of the books, and it'll burp and it'll still be hungry come next year.
So, and by fixing the pension system, does that mean you'd favor a two-tier pension system that doesn't change the pensions for the current employees or past employees, but for future employees hired, you would make it into, for the state system, you would make it into a defined contribution system as opposed to a defined benefit system?
You asked two major components within that same breath that you did so well, Jeff. One of them is, would I support a two-tiered pension system? In general terms, subject to the fine details, yes. The other question to that, part of that question was, would I support a defined contribution as opposed to a defined benefit? Subject to all the details, and that's why I'm very careful how I say this, because this tape will show up somewhere else someday.
You think somebody's watching this?
Yeah, think?
It's just you and me, Dan.
Yeah, it's just you and me and,
well, a few guys.
and that little camera back there. But the idea of a package, I believe, is the appropriate way to go. It is going to all be subject to what is the contribution. It's going to be subject to what the ages and what the benefits and so forth and so on are. But I believe that we need to address this from government, similar to what we've seen big companies deal with it when they ran into bankruptcy. We've seen American Airlines, United Airlines, and General Motors.
Subject to working out the details, you're talking about going toward at least a defined contribution system.
I am definitely subject to details, looking at a major change in the way that we do and the way that we have the pension system, the state of Illinois, especially, and because the Constitution protects those that are already in the system, it will be for those that come to the new entries once the deal is done. And that is a two-tiered pension system.
And do you think that major change is likely to include a change to a defined contribution system as opposed to a defined benefit system?
My sense is, in regards to all the details fine to it, I think there will be a complexion of defined contribution.
Okay. And so assuming that happens on the pension side, and the other major reform you said
is Medicaid.
Is Medicaid. Assuming those two things happen, then do you think you would look at an increase in the income tax or the sales tax?
Are you saying you, Dan Rutherford, or you, the collective body?
Well, no, yeah, you, Dan Rutherford, both in your role, assuming you became the state treasurer and had that office to use as a bully pulpit, and for the remaining 9 or 10 months in your role as a state senator, you may have a chance to even vote on it before.
Oh, I'll bet we do have a chance to vote on it before.
So assuming those two reforms are done to your satisfaction, are then you pretty open to an increase in income and sales tax?
No, no. I will be looking at the entire, as I said, those are the two major issues that must be fixed. Yeah. Those two things must be fixed.
You know, now, those two at a minimum, you're saying, but you may want more.
Absolutely.
So when Dan Proft says, and refer to Dan a lot just because I think he's thought this through. I'm not saying we don't endorse candidates, we don't support or not, but Dan gives us a lot of ideas to discuss on this show. I'm sure he's not doing it just for that purpose, but it is beneficial. He talks about big ticket state systems that have to be reformed, healthcare, which you mentioned,
right,
education, which we didn't discuss, pensions, which you've mentioned, transportation, which we didn't discuss. I've coined the acronym HEPT, H-E-P-T. Okay, we'll see if that sticks. So education, you might say that's far afield from being a treasurer, but you've just raised that issue. Is that an issue, a big ticket state system that you think has to be reformed in conjunction with any tax increase considerations?
I mean, it has to, because it's such a large part of our spending. But then you're going to get into, you know, the devil is always in those details, Jeff. It's you know, is it vouchers? Is it performance output? I mean, what we need to do is we need to look at, and I think everything is fair game to be looked at, and transportation, as you talked about, is one of those as well.
Well, would you like to see more school choice, whether it's school vouchers, whether it's charter schools?
I have a voting record that says so.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I mean, the answer. And
so you're again, for that school choice?
I am for
both school vouchers and charter schools.
I am for it in the context of the overall package, and that's the part that I'm very sensitive to about giving a check-off answer, yes or no. I mean, government is too complicated, and for our viewers, they don't want to have it just be the simple yes or no. I mean, that's the nice stuff, but you need to put it together in the whole package of what it means to the end. When I negotiate contracts in my company, when I negotiate contracts, I don't negotiate a line and a line and a line and say yes or no. We've got ourselves, we put the check mark by it, and once we get the collective result, that's when we make the final decision. That's why I believe government should be governed.
But as a state senator, they raised the cap on charter schools. You did, both in the State House and the State Senate, right? That legislation passed. You supported that, right?
I did.
Would you support lifting the cap and just say, at least in the inner city areas, have as many charter schools as they want? Why should we limit that?
I'm not opposed to that. Before I give you the absolute, I want to understand the dynamic to it.
Okay.
Again, I don't cut a deal on a piece of legislation until I know what the fine details to it are.
Let's go over the social issues. As we were saying before the show, people might find that odd to talk about, but they often say state treasurer may move up to governor, so they want to know the views of the social issues of their state treasurer for that reason. Gays, guns, God, abortion.
Okay.
I think Howard Dean used that phrasing once.
Sure.
Okay. Gays. You were one of the 3 votes in the state Senate for, was it House Bill 101? The Human Rights Amendment. Whatever.
I don't know the bill number. Yes,
Yeah.
I
The
voted.
Gay Rights Amendment.
No, I don't. Well, it's not a gay rights amendment. I mean, that's
less discrimination based to
Sure.
try to remove discrimination based on sexual orientation in housing,
in
employment.
There was 3 or 4 areas.
Credit, yeah.
Yeah, there was 3 or
Okay.
4 credit. I mean, so
Pam Altoff voted for that. Chris
yeah.
Sidonio and you. 3 of the Republican senators.
That is correct, and it passed and it's become law today. I do not believe we should have discrimination, and I support that. And you know, it isn't new that when I was in the Senate,
Can I interrupt?
support this.
I'll just say we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Dan Rutherford, running for treasurer in the Republican primary. He has no competition, but he will in the general election. You're watching the show on January 24th, 2010. Before the election, most of you, if you're watching on the web, you're watching it if you're watching on TV in Rockford, in Chicago, in Aurora, in Chicago metro suburbs. Most likely that's after the election. If you're watching it on the web, most likely it's before. Keep that in mind. And what you just saw, go right ahead.
I will, and it's a human rights bill. I believe we should not discriminate against people for borrowing money because of their sexual orientation. In regards to guns, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I do support concealed carry. I believe it's something we should have. In regards to the issue of abortion.
Would you support a ban on assault weapons? In the state level? There was one in the federal level that lapsed.
I know.
Should we ban assault weapons?
No. And in regards to abortion, I'm pro-life. I don't use that as the front.
Same-sex marriage or civil unions?
Let me finish here. In regards to abortion, I don't use that as my forte. As the first thing out there, but what we're doing right now in regards to the social issues is you're trying to have those be the definer of a good Republican from a bad Republican. I don't think you should do that. Not necessarily you, but I don't think you should do that.
Roe v. Wade. Would you like to see Roe v. Wade overturned?
That has nothing to do with the state treasurer's
office.
No,
but it will be. We should preface the discussion. No, if you run for governor someday,
if you run for governor someday, then we'll have that discussion.
So you don't want to answer that?
No, it's not. I'm trying to avoid it. It's when you find discussions going out there of people trying to go into something that has absolutely no relevance.
You won't say anything about parental notice?
I support parental notice. Now, I mean, does it mean it's 16, 18? I've got a voting record on that.
Does it have to be a parent or a legal guardian, or would you say parental notice?
You know what? I'm all about your rapid fire, rapid response, but they have nothing to do with the office of the Illinois State Treasurer. I am pro-life.